So what we're going to do now is we're going to move to our highly anticipated first panel of the day, our airline panel and our leaders panel, which will be moderated by somebody whose name will be familiar to you. Most of you who have an email account will get an email from saying, there's a new news article. That is Hilka Birns. So Hilka Birns is an award-winning journalist with the Swiss-based airline news and intelligence service, ch-aviation, who are a proud media partner of Aviadev and a long-term partner. It's the third time I've asked Hilka to do this session because she's so good at it, and she's the perfect fit because she has industry knowledge, the skills to elicit responses, and the ability to ask the tough questions. So please join me in welcoming Hilka to the stage. Yeah, just watch the clock.
Hello. There we go. Hello. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you, Daniel, for setting the stage for me so well. I don't need to do any introduction now, really. Last week, we were at the IATA AGM in Delhi, and that's where we heard that while African aviation shows potential for passenger growth, it is burdened by high costs, limited infrastructure, and regulatory barriers. The continent also holds 70% of the world's blocked airline funds, limiting access to critical revenue. Structural and policy barriers such as protectionism, inadequate infrastructure, poor connectivity. It took me 13 hours to get here from Cape Town, by the way. And restrictive visa policies further hinder growth and competitiveness. In this context, how can we rethink ownership, market access, and how do we unlock capital for African airlines? Where am I speaking now? Through this or that? Okay, thanks. Joining me today to deliberate this are Mesfin Tasew, Group Chief Executive Officer of Ethiopian Airlines. Mesfin, would you like to join me on stage? Give a hand, everyone. Good morning. Thank you. Leave me one chair and sit at the next one. Thank you. Next one up. Hello? Okay. Munawer Dhirani, the Chief Executive Officer of Flightlink. Please join me on stage. Thanks. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Hello, here we go. Hi, Munawer. Thanks for joining us. Please join Mesfin on stage. Next one up, Helen Brume, Director of Projects and Asset-Based Finance at Afreximbank. Please join us on stage, Helen. Julian Edmunds, the Group Strategy and Development Director at Fastjet Group. Good morning, Julian. And last but not least, Mr. Peter Ulanga, the new Managing Director and CEO of Air Tanzania. Welcome, everyone. While they take their place, in the meantime, a question for the audience. So please take out your Slido apps. And the question should be up. John? Yeah? What are the three most critical elements limiting market access in Africa? Is it regulatory restrictions, lack of investment, or an aging fleet? Please get onto the app and vote, and we'll get back to the results at the end of the session. Good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you here. To begin with, I'd like to set the scene. We've got 4 airlines with us here today, 2 state airlines, 2 private airlines. Could you each briefly sketch your ownership model and how it gives you market access. Let's start with Ethiopian. Mesfin, state-owned airline operating from a regulated market environment in Ethiopia, but you've also managed to tap into subsidiaries through joint ventures in Africa. What is your strategy? 2 minutes, in a nutshell.
Thank you. Thank you very much. As you said, Ethiopian Airlines is a government-owned airline, 100%. However, it operates as a private commercial airline. Our relationship with the government is mainly ownership. Otherwise, the management and the board of Ethiopian Airlines has full autonomy to manage the airline, and it has helped us to grow fast, to be successful. When it comes to ownership, we believe that ownership is not a determinant factor for the success of an airline. Ethiopian Airlines is a best example, but an airline which is privately owned can also be successful. I can take an example of a subsidiary airline in West Africa, Togo, where a shareholder and manager of Skylight Hotel, which has been privately owned until last year. And, the airline is very successful, making fast growth, making a lot of profit. So we believe that ownership doesn't determine the success of an airline. Instead, it is a relationship between the owner and the airline that determines the success of the airline. For an airline to be very successful, regardless of the ownership, it should have the autonomy to operate independently based on business terms.
Great, sorry. At the other side, we've got another state-owned airline, Air Tanzania. Good morning, Peter. Thank you for joining us here today. Air Tanzania, it's been loss-making for a couple of years, and you now also have been denied access to the European market. As the new CEO with a background in the private sector, you've done a great job. You've got most of the aircraft flying now, only one on the ground. But what are you going to do to regain your European market access?
Thank you very much. And you've asked me 3 or 4 different, very difficult questions, so I'll try to see how best I can cover them all. First, as a state-owned airline, which the government of United Republic of Tanzania from 2016 started revamping. They bought new aircraft. So when I was looking at the question, the issue of aging aircraft is not part of the issues which we have as Air Tanzania. So that's coming up. Something else about issues of who owns the airline, I think it was well covered by my colleague from Ethiopian Airlines. I think the most important thing there is the backing of the owners. Whoever owns it, they should have a strong commitment to allow the airline to grow. The level of autonomy spoken about is important because we live in a very dynamic market which would not be able to survive the bureaucracy of owners if they interfered with the management of the day-to-day of the airline. Whether you're private or public, still that would actually account for that. The third part of the question was related to what happened, I would say 2 years ago, which came to the Air Tanzania being included on the air safety list of the European Union. That started a bit earlier by the application of Air Tanzania to have the overflight rights into Europe for cargo operations in 2023. And then the European Union did, as usual, an audit. There were 19 findings, 2 of them being level 1 and 16 being level 2 findings. And out of the 16 level 2 findings, they had one systemic finding about the level 2 findings. We're supposed to do a root cause and a corrective action plan, was not done properly. We got a provisional rejection back in 2023, and then in April, we got a formal rejection, which would require us to withdraw the application and redo the things as usual, but that process wasn't properly done that way. And by the sitting of the Air Safety Committee of December, of actually November in 2024, we were included on the list. But soon after that, as what needed to be done, we engaged with consultants who are working on the corrective action plan. But as usual, that's when I joined Air Tanzania. We don't waste a crisis. We have taken steps to now use that opportunity to transform Air Tanzania. And I can assure you, within a year from now, you'll see a completely different Air Tanzania going in many other destinations across the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that deserves some applause. Flightlink, the other Tanzanian airline here, a small private operator, leisure-focused. What's your strategy for market access?
Thank you for the opportunity to be here in this panel in beautiful Zanzibar. Flightlink is a private airline, and our core business is tourism. You know, as His Excellency, the President, and speakers before me, who said that aviation and tourism in the whole East African region are running they are hand in glove. And Flightlink was established to tap into the tourism market, and this is our core business. We complement each other. We are a domestic airline. We do a lot of safari flights. We work with the big boys who bring in tourists, and we fly the tourists to the Serengeti. Now we will be starting to fly to Masai Mara via Nairobi Wilson. And our core business is the East African tourism circuit, and that's what we are tapping into.
Okay, great. Lastly, Fastjet. Julian, you tried the low-cost model. It didn't work, the low-cost Pan-African model. Now you're looking at the franchise model. So spell that out for us.
Thanks, Hilka. Yes, as you quite rightly said, the low-cost model for Fastjet as a sort of Pan-African low-cost carrier didn't work. We now have a very different ownership structure. We have a different approach on what we do. We retracted and sort of collapsed ourselves just into Fastjet Zimbabwe. We survived COVID. We, in fact, please excuse me, COVID in some ways saved us. It allowed us to reevaluate everything, to work together and concentrate. And we were able to be nimble and react quickly. We're now adapting that to more of a franchise, so we will be rolling out Fastjet Airlines elsewhere over the next few years. And that's going to be an exciting time. And with our ownership structure, that helps us do that. So within our greater family, we have a network of very, very good and sound businesses that all support each other. So we have an international leasing division based out of Dublin, which has risk appetite and is experienced at leasing aircraft into Africa. So that's there to support us where other lessors might be more reticent. That works well. We have the benefit of massive group insurance policies which give us economies of scale. We focus our skill bases where we need to so that our franchisees don't need to worry about too much of the technical stuff because we can cover an awful lot of that. So distribution, revenue accounting, revenue management, those sort of things.
So we've spoken to the airlines. Let's speak to the banker, Helen. Does ownership really matter? Does it matter whether an airline is state or privately owned?
Thank you, Hilka, and good morning, everyone. I don't believe that the success or failure of an airline is tied to the ownership structure. I mean, we've seen numerous instances of successes and failures using both ownership models. But what we tend to see is that for state-owned airlines, there is a prevalence of underinvestment. There's a prevalence of state interference. And in a bid to ensure that those airlines thrive, they sometimes or most of the times put up protectionist policies which stifle an enabling and competitive environment, which is what investment seeks. We have seen again, instances of state-owned airlines that have benefited from very good management, been very well run, and they have been able to attract capital. I mean, if you look at Qatar Air's investment in Airlink and Rwanda Air, I believe that demonstrates that the right investments will always be attracted to the right opportunity. What we need to focus on is making sure that there is a very good competitive landscape, the right structures are in place, benefits of good management and talent to support those aircrafts. And it should clearly be agnostic of whether or not it is state-owned or privately owned, because the economics and fundamentals for running a good airline transcends the ownership structure. Thank you.
Do public-private partnerships work in Africa or anywhere else for that matter? Mesfin, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it can work. And our experience shows that we have been partnering with African governments to set up their national airlines in different countries. A typical example is Malawi. In Malawi, we have established a joint airline in cooperation with the government of Malawi. So we are participating as a private investor in Malawi, whereas the Malawi government is the government of the country. And this cooperation is working very well. The airline is doing well, is growing, is profitable. So this is an example that public-private cooperation can work successfully. The only important factor is that when we establish such airlines, we have to agree they have to have a good governance, good leadership, and there is no interference from the government. Under such terms, public-private cooperation can work very well.
Are there not diverging agendas and mandates, though? Isn't that a given that there will always be friction between public and private partnerships?
Well, yeah, you can experience that problem, but there should be commitment from the government, and there should be vision from the government as well. There should be goals that have to be achieved, and as long as the government is disciplined for that partnership to work on commercial terms, it should work. Otherwise, if there is interference of different sorts, it will not be successful. It is doomed to failure.
And what about foreign ownership caps? I mean, given that foreign ownership caps are unlikely to be lifted, what are your thoughts on foreign equity partners?
Peter, do you have any thoughts on this?
It's an interesting question. Thank you very much. And I might not be well versed to address it fully, but I think one of the most important things in an industry which is as capital intensive as aviation, the best thing is to remove the caps to allow inflow of capital. And in different markets, we have different risk profiles. So probably this risk profile of investing in Africa would be limited if you only limit to people who are in Africa. If you allow it, there's also diversification, which will allow that capital to come in. Thank you.
Julian, what are your thoughts on this? Are foreign ownership caps the best approach? Sorry, my mic keeps changing. And what are they meant to prevent and achieve? And have they done this?
I think really with the foreign ownership aspect, the main thing is what are the governments trying to achieve by putting a cap in place? Are they trying to look for to prohibit real growth? Look at domestic growth. It's all well to have sort of big super carriers flying internationally, but then who's going to look after the domestic market? So it is a very complex question, and realistically, all we want is a level playing field, and for people to sort of we compete on equal terms.
Munawer, your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I run a private airline. The cost of capital is very high. The cost of running business in our region is very high in terms of access to capital, maintenance, aircraft acquisitions, leases. Invest to bring in investors into our region is very important. Not only they will bring money or capital, they bring expertise as well. And if you look at our region, our East African region, we lack a little bit of expertise, and training expertise is very important. So to bring in investors, and if the cap is, at the moment the cap is 49%, and if our government will allow a little bit, 49% is still good, but I believe that if we attract more investors into our region, especially in aviation and tourism, I think the region can take a lot of advantage and expand the business. Yeah.
Mesfin, you invest, Ethiopian invests in joint ventures across Africa. If there was no foreign ownership cap, would there be any difference to what you are able to achieve at the moment?
When Ethiopian Airlines partners with governments or other investors in different countries, our major motive is not to get financial gains in the short term. That's not the whole goal. Our goal is to have strong partners in the different parts of Africa. Means we can partner on exchanging passengers, and we benefit more from the alliance of the newly established airlines with us. So far, our investments are capped with a maximum of 49%, and we are okay with that. But if the policies are relaxed, we'll be okay to invest more if there is no enough contribution from local investors. For us, the main goal is not to have a big share and get more part of the profit. That's not the whole goal. our goal is to have successful airlines in different parts of Africa, to have strong partners so that we grow together. We develop the air transport industry in Africa and effectively compete with the mega carriers that come to Africa. We don't push to have more share into our partnership, but if that is allowed, depending on the circumstances, we can invest more.
And Helen, is there sufficient local African appetite for investment in airlines?
I would say if you look at just the general demographics on the continent, the fact that the average age of over 70% of the population is under 25, with the increasing push to implement the AFCFTA and the implications of that for increased air route travel, the fact that there's increasing rapid urbanization as people try to move to well-developed areas. If you look at those basic demographics, that's enough to suggest that there should be sufficient appetite to invest. But then you look at the salient issues, the issues around inconsistent profitability, poor management with the airlines. But I think what is undeniable is that there are pools of capital locally. I mean, if you look at the size of the pension fund industry in Africa, it's $1.3 billion. That is capital that is sitting to be unlocked. But it has to be unlocked under the right conditions. We at Afreximbank, in response to what we see are the opportunities for growth in this sector, despite the risks. And we pride ourselves, obviously, as a DFI who has operated on the continent for over 30 years. So for the most part, I would say that we do understand the risks of the sector and of the continent. In the second half of this year, we're going to be launching our aircraft leasing platform, which is a direct response to some of the challenges that African airlines face with respect to commanding equitable lease rates, lease rental rates, compared to their foreign partners that operate in the other parts of the world. And the whole idea is supposed to be additive. It's supposed to increase the amount of aircrafts operating on the continent. It's supposed to increase and facilitate regional integration, which, as I mentioned earlier, greatly supports the implementation of the AFCFTA, which Afreximbank also clearly supports. We do have a meeting room outside. Please stop by to have a conversation on how Afreximbank can support African airlines in coming on board our leasing platform. Thank you.
Well, I think that's something we can applaud, that initiative. Unlocking the capital for African airlines. I want each one of the airlines to give me 5 pain points that you experience. Let's start with Peter.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you for putting me on the spot on this one. I've got several pain points, and one of them, when I was speaking at the first time, was we're talking about transformation, and any transformation requires human capital. Skills are not readily available in this industry across the globe, but particularly in Africa. So that's one area where it's my first pain point for our transformation of Air Tanzania. The second one is high costs in different areas. You've spoken about the presentations have identified that it's actually significantly more expensive to run an airline in Africa than the rest of the world, both in fuel, maintenance, and many other costs. So that's a big pain point for us. Another pain point which I've identified in my 7 months in Air Tanzania is also quick turnaround on availability of AAG parts. How quickly can we get the parts in Tanzania when we have an aircraft on the ground? As quickly as we can. And Another one of the pain points is related to financing. It has been mentioned in a way, how is it impacting? Currently, we also have issues related there. And the final point is on market development. And this is related, I'm sure Flightlink would also speak about that. You might have markets, but not enough airports to go and land to in Tanzania for a domestic market, also in other places. There are limitations here and there. So those are the 5 which I monitor them daily to see how best we can work around. The few which are keeping me awake are the first 2.
I think we feel your pain. Julian, are they the same or different?
I mean, very much the same. I mean, to echo Peter, the brain drain, for want of a better word. Once you train to be a pilot, you're a worldwide commodity. You can then become a pilot anywhere else in the world, and we've seen it. I was before I joined Fastjet, I was in Tanzania for many years. And I ran a well-known company here, and we lost a lot of pilots when Air Tanzania started. And you know, and now Air Tanzania are probably losing a lot of pilots to the Middle East, and we see this right the way through. And that skill base is a real problem for Africa. Because we generally are the feeders, we're the people that we train them and they start, but they get sucked out too quickly. And I think that's an issue we need to address somehow.
And Munawer?
As the accountable manager and the owner of Flightlink, we have a lot of difficulty in accessing capital, number 1. Number 2, expertise, human capital. It's a big problem in Africa and in East Africa. Number 3, taxation, very high taxation. I think some of the government officials are here. Airport tax is very expensive. 20%, 30%. You know, I think we should really have a topic. I think I request John to have a topic on this. Taxation is very high. It's the highest in Africa.
Yeah.
It's hindering the growth of airline. Ethiopian Airlines, I think, is the biggest airline in Africa. He will tell you the tax is very high.
Yeah.
And number 4 is access to aircrafts. You know, when you are in our region in Africa, in Tanzania, or Kenya, or Uganda, East Africa, the lessors want more money from us. You know, the cost of leasing is higher. So based on that, everything goes up. So we have to, and the 5th one is capital again. We need money. Banks will only lend you when you are successful. They will not lend you when you want money. When you have money, they want to lend you. I don't know how it works. How does this thing work? When you don't want money, they phone you. They call you all the time. Mr. Dhirani, when can we talk? When you don't have money, they don't want to give you money. So this is my take.
Yeah. Helen, I'm going to let you respond in a minute. But first I want to hear from Mesfin. What are the 5 pain points for Ethiopian Airlines?
Yeah, different airlines have different types of problems. For Ethiopian Airlines, the number 1 problem that we face today is shortage of airplanes. We have a long-term growth strategy which outlines how many destinations to fly every year, where to fly, but we couldn't meet our goals because of shortage of airplanes. That is number one. Number two, shortage of spare parts due to the global supply chain problem. We are forced to ground even some of our airplanes due to shortage of engines, and that is limiting our growth. The third one is, as my colleague said earlier, we are experiencing some turnover of skilled technicians. In the past, it used to be to the Middle East, but now they are going everywhere, to Europe, North America, everywhere, and that is a big concern for us, and we are hiring and training a lot of people, young people, to cope up with it. That is our third problem. The fourth one is generally there is a rising cost. Costs are rising everywhere, except fuel. We are lucky that fuel cost has declined compared to the previous years, but the price of spare parts, the costs of operation in general have increased. The other one is tax. Tax in Africa is a big issue. Sometimes we are surprised that we don't have this problem outside Africa. We fly to Europe, Middle East, Asia, North America. Number one, the taxes are clearly defined. We fulfill the tax requirements, so we have no problem. But when it comes to Africa, in many countries, the tax is not clearly defined. While we operate to that country for several years, all of a sudden, one day, the tax authorities come and say, oh, you have to pay so much tax. So tax is a big issue in Africa, hindering our growth. If you allow me a sixth one to add.
Absolutely.
Blocked funds. In Africa, in several countries, we have a lot of funds kept in banks in local currencies, which we are not able to repatriate.
Yeah.
And it had improved for some time, but now again, some countries are having a lot of difficulties to allow us to repatriate our money. These are our challenges.
Yeah. And Helen, do you want to respond to particularly what Munawer had to say?
So I'm going to adopt a different approach because everybody has spoken about access to capital. So I'm supposed to be the solution. So let me tell you what your peers tell us as bankers are some of the biggest pain points. And the first is really market access barriers. If you think about how slowly the SATM has been implemented.
You said the word now.
As of today, only 38 of the African Union countries have signed up to that, and only 10 are fully implementing that. And then the second one, again, on the market access barrier, is limited intra-African connectivity, right? I understand that the bilateral air service agreements are fairly restrictive, which is why it will probably take you 9 to 15 hours, like you said, to fly from Cape Town to Zanzibar when it could easily be a 2 to 3 hour journey. And then there's also the structural issue, which talks about the access to talent, the access to good quality management. And I think the overall poor or could be better business planning across the airlines. How do you maximize your routes? Why are you flying half-empty aircrafts from Gambia to London? Could you be focusing on intra-regional routes as opposed to long-haul routes? How are you optimizing your fleet? So those are just some of the issues. Thank you.
Thanks. question at the airlines now again. How have you improved and enhanced your risk profile to help you access more affordable finance and lease rates? Can I start with Peter again?
Thank you very much. And again, for some reason, I'm the first to ask. Is it because of
because I've got a direct sideline to you.
It could be alphabetic, maybe Air Tanzania starts again. So risk profile is an important area to look at, to actually as a way of minimizing not only high cost of capital, but also insurance. So this is what, as Air Tanzania have been doing. Like I said, between last November up until now, we've been working very well in upgrading our systems to make them more, I would say, better, modern. And we have engaged with a lot of partners now, with both OEMs and other vendors, to ensure that we have an airline which portrays the picture which the government of United Republic of Tanzania wants to portray. We look up to Ethiopian Airlines. I learn a lot of what happened in your transformation, so we have to, soon we'll be where we'll be looking up to you in terms of the number of aircraft and the number of routes you're doing. It's not an easy task, but we always say that a big problem has to take a lot of big initiative to achieve what we want. So currently, in what we do in improving our risk profile, we are upgrading our systems, and this is going to be one. But again, we're engaging with a lot of partners to do that. We have partnership agreements with other bigger airlines we're working on, and also soon we'll come to Ethiopia also to have some conversation to talk to you guys. Thank you.
Welcome.
Great. Julian, you've got an international partner as a backer. Does that make a difference?
Yes, it does, undoubtedly. But our ownership model is quite risk averse. If you look at the history of Fastjet, there's quite a lot of money that, and John Howell's money even, in Fastjet. And as a result of our sort of restructure and sort of the ownership restructure, we basically now do everything with a very strong balance sheet. So we own most of our assets, and then those that we do lease, we are leasing on the basis that we're very, very confident that we're going to be able to pay for it.
Mm. And Munawer, you've sketched your pain points. So how are you able to lower that risk profile?
It's very tricky in aviation. You know, we as domestic regional airline, we are exposed to every bad news in the market, as we are exposed now, about the EU ban of...
yes, which
so,
impacts you as well.
Yeah, so it's a tricky question. I think when you are running an airline, you should know what you're doing, really. You should know what your markets are, how is your funding coming in, who your partners are. It's a tricky business, really. It's governance is very important. As the company itself, you know, the people who are running the airline, accountability is very important, you know. All these things. There is no formula, believe in me. No one has got a formula here to de-risk the... But investment is good. You de-risk. You share the risks. You bring in more investors into the company. You know, I think this is the way of de-risking your company or your operations.
Yeah. And Mesfin, I mean, governance and track record. You've got all that. You've also got the state behind you. Is there another formula that you can offer somebody like Munawer, how to lower the risk profile?
First, if I speak about Ethiopian Airlines, we have a robust risk management system. We have a department that manages the corporate risk, which includes financial, operational, and other risks. As a business, we take different strategies to manage our risk. One of them is diversification. At Ethiopian Airlines, we have a diversified set of business units which work together so that when the business environment is not good in one area, the others can support the company, and it has worked a lot. During COVID, when all airlines stopped flying due to COVID, we continued with our cargo because we were pursuing cargo as another business unit. So that is how we manage our own risks. Well, for our colleague airlines in Africa, I think even though diversification may not be a proper risk management strategy for them, but they need to have a risk management system, which means they have to identify all their risks and put mitigation actions, which has to be continuously evaluated because new risks will emerge every time, and the previous risks may not be any serious risk for them. So my general advice is every airline, depending on its business environment, should have a risk management system.
Yeah. And Helen, from a banking perspective, what advice can you give these airlines?
I think, the concepts of leasing versus ownership, I think in the early years, airlines should prioritize leasing aircrafts as opposed to ownership. And as their business model evolves and as they become more developed and have access to more market share, then they can explore owning aircraft because it just reduces the capital strains, especially when your revenues are volatile and they're not so easily predictable. The second is the issue of fleet rationalization, right? Making sure that even if you are buying aircrafts, you're buying aircrafts that suit the routes that you're going to be traveling on, so that you optimize your load factors. I talked about, not flying half-empty aircrafts all the way to London or Paris just because you're trying to fill that route. If a route is not possible, then it's probably time to rethink your entire business model. And then I've also talked about the absence of a skill set, right? And I think the direct approach to dealing with this is to start investing in local talent, because there has to be a long-term sustainable plan in building local talent. Foreign pilots are expensive, and as my colleague says, they will always look to go to greener pastures. So the idea of, and we do have the demographics to support it, the idea of investing in our youth, in our talents, to develop some of these skill sets, because these people will eventually ultimately go on to manage some of these aircrafts. And then some of the other issues probably don't have anything to do with airlines. They're really more regulatory, and they're really more of the role that the government plays. When we talk about visa liberalization, right, 46 countries at the moment require visas. I'm a Nigerian citizen, and I needed to get a visa to come to Zanzibar. We saw what happened with Rwanda when they lifted the visa requirements, and the tourist activity increased by 17% post-2017. I've talked about the implementation of SATM. I understand that even just getting that on board would boost revenues, would boost intra-regional connectivity. And, you know, I would say finally just, I think I've said it all.
Well, you've mentioned the word SATM, and I guess we can't, unfortunately, talk about market access in Africa without mentioning the word. And Julian, I know you're rolling your eyes now. Do you really believe SATM still has a future? Julian?
No.
No.
I think in an ideal world, SATM's brilliant, absolutely terrific, but it doesn't work in an African context. We have no EASA, we have no common platform. If one takes the European model, and this is where I believe Fastjet went wrong, is they sort of assumed that they could put an EasyJet into Africa. You can't do that. And we have too many regulatory hurdles. So, and you can look and say, yes, it's great. And if you look between South Africa and Zimbabwe now, we have an unlimited bilateral. And that's terrific for the consumer. It's not quite so good for Fastjet because we are at a very different stage of our growth level in comparison to our competitors. And, you know, many people would say, well, that's your problem. And to a degree it is, but ourselves and Air Zimbabwe, we have the same problem. We're at a very different scale to our competitors from South Africa. And yet, the Zimbabwe economy requires on us. We employ Zimbabweans. We pay tax in Zimbabwe. We accept Zimbabwe dollars. Nobody else does. And what happens when we're no longer sustainable? Who flies the domestic? Are the Zimbabwe government going to then hand over their whole airspace? Whereas if we had a regional, and maybe the approach is to look at a Southern Africa to start with, you know, air authority, and open up so split Africa into four, and have East Africa, Southern Africa, North Africa, West Africa, and develop more of an open skies policy regionally, and then develop the overall thing. In the end, yes, SATAM should work if you take the European model, but there has to be the regulatory understanding. You cannot have different regulatory approach right from the beginning.
Should we rather be looking at for meaningful bilateral relationships between like-minded states? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I mean, it needs proper liberalization. So you can't have a scenario where, you know, you hand out fifth freedom rights to everywhere at the expense of your own carriers, or you've basically got to almost say, well, yeah, okay, and say to Mesfin, for example, then you also need to fly domestically in Zimbabwe. Now, he'd probably be delighted, but they're not going to do that at this stage because the laws and things don't allow for that to happen. And so that's why I don't believe SATAM in the end can work.
Mesfin, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I have a different view on SATAM. Ethiopian Airlines flies to Zanzibar probably 11 or 12 times per week. On all of these flights, we bring tourists and investors. Probably several of you may have flown or used Ethiopian Airlines to come here, promoting conference. So allowing airlines to fly to a country or a city brings more value to the socio-economic development of that country than what the local airline would generate in terms of revenue or profit to the government. So it is from this perspective that I strongly believe the African air transport has to be liberalized to accelerate the development of the continent. Protecting national carrier is one aspect. It has some advantage, but liberalizing will bring more benefit to the country. So it is, if the governments are more interested on developing their economies, I think they should give priority to allowing more airlines to come into their countries instead of protecting the national carriers. That is how the US economy grew, the European economy grew, Asian. So I understand the different regulatory platforms have to be standardized. I fully agree to that, but I think this continent will benefit more by accelerating the implementation of SATM. Otherwise, we are talking today and tomorrow that the air transport industry in Africa is not developed and is not supporting the development of the continent. And we have the free African continental free trade area that cannot be realized without liberalizing the air transport industry. So it's a choice for African governments to make. If they want to expedite the development of their nations through cooperation, more inter-Africa trade, I think SATM is a necessity. So that is how I look at it.
Yeah, we could carry on talking about SATM, I think, for another hour, but our time is up. Unfortunately, no time for questions from the audience either. Slido, yes, the results, are they up? So there we go. Regulatory restrictions are the most critical elements limiting market access in Africa. I think we can all agree on that. Thank you very much, all of you, and a big round of applause for the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. Thank you very much.